On the front pages of the papers this morning, you see all kinds of things that are health-related, and some of them, NAFDAC is already taking head-on. One, of course, is the Kano incidents, as well as COVID vaccine issues and communication that are still conflicting even from people who are supposed to know better. So she joins us this morning, the Director General of NAFDAC, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye. She joins us virtually from Abuja, along with Professor Philip Njemanze, who is Chairman, International Institute of Advanced Research and Training. He also joins us from Owerri virtually. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Prof. Adeyeye, let's begin with you. All the issues that are, thank you. What's happening in Kano is definitely something that one would want to wonder what exactly is happening. The strange disease came up, sometime late last week or into this week, and then we have reports that NAFDAC is already investigating and some findings have been made. Could you please expatiate on the findings so far?
Well, good morning. It's good to be here. This is a case of the Kano incident is a case of food poisoning with juice or flavored drinks that has a chemical called dansami. And we are looking at this. It is very, very serious because the food poisoning resulted in diarrhea, vomiting, and hospitalization. Our zonal director, pharmacist Gimba, is on top of this, and our pharmacovigilance officers are also inquiring or investigating what actually happened. So we're going to do a lot of testing in the lab, first to know what is the nature of this dansami chemical that probably led to the food poisoning.
Well, one wonders, what the origin of that would be in the first place, and the fact that according to what we have on the front page of one of the papers this morning, it's an investment running into millions that some people made, and so what's going to happen in that stead? Has the person been apprehended, and what's the story around that person?
Actually, right now, I don't have the details as of this. I got the information yesterday, but in terms of arrest, I've not gotten more information since yesterday. But our pharmacovigilance is already there, and once we determine the cause, and then we will know what next to do in terms of arresting the culprits or bringing them to the office to explain what is going on.
What are the chances of a recurrence, Prof?
The chances of recurrence are minimal. However, I'm going to qualify that because we don't even know whether this chemical is smuggled or even the flavored drink manufacturing is not approved by NAFDAC. That sometimes is what we find out. A doctor was sent something to me a few months ago, or a few weeks ago actually, that a medicine is not working. And I said, okay, will you check whether there is NAFDAC number? And coincidentally, there was no NAFDAC number on 2 of the 3 medicines. So we have, every day we battle, what do you call it, top standard falsified medicines. We have porous walls. I said porous walls, porous borders, sorry. And we work every day. That is part of our core regulatory activities, running and looking after, smuggled goods, smuggled drugs that are substandard, sometimes counterfeited. So we just have to find out exactly whether this particular flavored drink was approved by NAFDAC. And if they approved by NAFDAC, what was causing the food poisoning? And it may be source of water, because sachet water is also associated with this. We have apprehended, we have shut down many companies, water companies, because of the unsanitary conditions that they have at their sites. Many times we approve a site and they give us, they show the day of inspection, they show the best. Sometimes they will go and rent equipment that we know we will pass, or equipment that will pass rather. And after we leave, they return the equipment, put people that are not as qualified back to the site. So the work of NAFDAC is a daily, round-the-clock, 24/7 vigilance. And what we also ask the citizens to do is to please work with us. So please work with us, call us, so that we can easily go and follow up on this. We have offices in 36+1 FCT states in the country, and our staff go around, as for their regular duties. The COVID-19, and I would want to also underscore that, the lockdown last year, we could not visit for about 5-6 months. That also added to the relaxation or the violation that we are observing. But we are getting on top of this as we speak.
I thought your staff are meant to be essential workers who can move around during lockdown. So clearly that must have set back your fight. And I think it's a pointer really to the fact that we need to give NAFDAC all the support we need because of the work you do in ensuring that the things we put in our system in terms of food, drug, are safe for use. Now we're talking vaccines. As you're battling the strange deaths in Kano and other areas, you're also in the thick of things when it comes to this vaccine rollout. And just recently, there was a report about NAFDAC destroying fake vaccines. So just before we get into, Nigeria's vaccine rollout, what is this talk about fake vaccines, first of all?
Okay, the destruction of drugs, fake vaccines that took place in the northeast, northeast, south, and southeast recently involved destruction of vaccines that we have seized in the past. One of them is actually a tetanus toxoid vaccine that we seized. It was stored at shop temperature, what I would call shop temperature. That is much higher. Sometimes it's 30 degrees centigrade or 40 degrees centigrade, depending on the temperature. And this tetanus toxoid vaccine is supposed to be in the refrigerator or in the freezer. So we seized this last year, actually 2019, COVID-19 pandemic didn't allow us to destroy last year. So that vaccine is part of what we destroyed over the last 2 weeks. We have not seized any COVID-19 vaccine. We are on the prowl because we know that people are injecting others with vaccines that NAFDAC did not approve, or vaccines that did not pass through Ministry of Health and Primary Health. And if a vaccine doesn't pass through NAFDAC for approval, and pass through Primary Health or Ministry of Health, we take that vaccine as unregistered, and the vaccines could be fake. So we are warning and imploring our citizens to not take vaccines that are not in the pipeline of primary health.
Okay. Well,
because we are supposed to follow up the vaccine. We are supposed to follow up the safety, but
right.
without us being there, there's a danger. Thank you.
Okay, Prof, before I bring in Professor Njemanze, let me just quickly get clarity on this, because now we're at a point where about 20 countries have halted the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine, either the batch they got or the vaccine in general, as a result of reports of blood clots in the brain and all of that, which I'm sure NAFDAC is closely following. But time and again, I've heard authorities, including yourself, saying that the benefits far outweigh the risks, which is why we're not halting it in Nigeria. Just in layman terms, because, I mean, scientifically that means something, but what does that mean for the average Nigerian listening to you right now?
Okay, thank you so much. That is a very good point to discuss. We gave the AstraZeneca vaccine emergency use authorization. And this took place after exhaustive poring over the data that were contained in the dossier. This was after more matured regulatory agencies have approved. This was after WHO has approved for emergency use listing. So we did not do this nonchalantly at all, because the health of our people is prime to NAFDAC. However, when it comes to development of any product, there are phases in which the product goes through. Preclinical, clinical phases, that is made up of 1, 2, 3, phases 1, 2, 3, and then post-marketing or pharmacovigilance phase. These vaccines have been studied up to the phase 3 clinical trials. And then where we are right now is post-marketing pharmacovigilance, or what we call phase 4 study. When a product is being developed, which is part of this emergency use authorization, is still being watched, but still being studied, because we have not given it, no regulatory agency has given it full licensure. Because it is still under study, there will be more information coming out. And part of the information up to phase 3 clinical trial is safety and efficacy. If the side effects or adverse events are very, very few, in which case the risks outweigh, the risks are so minimal compared to the benefits. Most of the time, that product is approved. The side effects, they are minimal. Let me give you the example of this AstraZeneca. 17 million people have been injected with AstraZeneca in Europe, UK, and only 37 cases. And I don't want to use that only, carelessly, because it is 37 individuals. But when you look at 37 over 17 million, you are talking of 0.000002%. That is very, very small. If we have to destroy or stop the use of medicines with a risk of 0.000002%, then we will not have medicines at all. It is very important to take care of the side of the adverse events, but nonetheless, we have to look at this in a global perspective.
Well, you've underscored something very critical, and that is the fact that those figures are people. They are not just figures. But let's take this to Professor Njemanze. Well, this has been on for a while, and you've been hearing a lot of things yourself about how it is efficacious, how it's not efficacious. Even the deputy governor of Benue State was reported this morning to have said that he has issues. Even though he's chairman of the engagement of COVID-19 in his state, he's still himself referencing this case in Europe. How does it strike you?
Well, as the DG of NAFDAC has said, this was given an emergency.
Oh, I hope we'll get him back real soon, because, I mean, that's another angle that he's raised as well, the fact that it's an emergency approval given globally. And I guess it also underscores the issues some people have also had when they think, wait a minute, under normal circumstances, vaccines don't get ready so easily, so quickly.
I know that's been a major conversation, but when you listen to scientists saying, we've tried to build capacity before now. So this is as a result of capacity that has been built prior to this time. But, you know, something I'd like to take on Professor Adeye as we work on Professor Njemanze's connection. Prof, I'd just like to know, because, I mean, almost 20 countries or even more have currently halted the use of the AstraZeneca vaccine. And these details are there for people to consider and eventually make a decision on what they think about this vaccine, which is why we have you, at least, to put things in the right perspective. So when you say that, I mean, the benefits far outweigh the risks, but when you compare that with the fact that 20 countries have halted the use of that vaccine, so for them, they're saying better safe than sorry, rather than saying the benefits far outweigh the risks. So really, don't you think that reason is enough, especially when you see those countries, I mean, Denmark, Iceland, and the rest? Don't you think it's enough reason to step back and say, well, maybe we should just slow down on this?
It is logical to think that way, but when you come to think of the many hundreds, thousands that are dying, especially in Europe, of COVID disease, then you start wondering, is it better to die than to take a risk of 0.00002%? We have to put things in perspective. Some of those countries that have halted it, they are halting it very temporarily. I don't blame them, but at the same time, we have to look at the risk of getting COVID-19 disease versus the risk of getting a side effect or adverse event, which has not been tied. By the way, the adverse event has not been tied to the blood clot, has not been tied to the vaccine. They are still studying it because you have to have what is called causality. What is causing this? There is so much to learn about the disease, about the vaccines. Again, I don't want to belittle what happened about those who had blood clots. No. But have we considered whether some people already have COVID before taking the vaccines? Ideally, you are supposed to wait a month if you have COVID before taking the vaccines. But we, the healthcare givers, frontline workers, we need to engage the potential vaccinees more. Engage them. Okay, have you had COVID over the last month? Do you have blood pressure? Do you have diabetes? Questions that can trigger information that will say, oh, no, maybe you will come back in about a month or you wait for a while. And also, we have to make sure that the vaccinee stays around for a short while after the vaccination.
Okay. Well,
for
Prof,
myself, yes, sir.
I just wanted to take Professor Njemanze. All of these things that you're saying, they are quite valid and quite good. Very many questions that one would want to ask, but we will come to them in steps. Professor Njemanze, please go ahead.
Yes, I think as I underscored earlier, that this was just an emergency authorization. So we study what happens using a very important principle called precautionary measures. Precautionary means that if anything anywhere occurs, you will stop the use of that medicine because it's an experimental drug. We are still in the phase 4 of this. We do not know. The manufacturers don't know what will happen. The regulators don't know the long-term effects because there is still no long-term effect. This was just produced. So that precautionary measure mandates that should anything occur in Ireland, Iceland, Norway, Spain, elsewhere, we must here in Nigeria. We will not wait until it happens at Apapa or Oshodi. No, we must here in Nigeria immediately institute a suspension. And that then allows the regulators to clearly and follow up the cases. That's what should be done with the AstraZeneca vaccine. It is an experimental vaccine. And we cannot just start giving this. Only, when you give a vaccine, the adverse effects can come even as late as 23 days later. So there are short-term effects, which the DG has outlined. You have to wait for 15 to 30 minutes or 1 hour. These are the immediate effects. But there are some effects that are delayed responses. So this is what should be done immediately. We should suspend the use of that vaccine. We are not in a pandemic in the real sense of it, as far as Nigeria is concerned. You are talking about 168 cases, 170 cases, let us say even 200,000 cases. This is not something that will mandate us exposing people who overall will face a low risk if you give them the vaccine. When you talk about, oh no, it's 0.001%, for that person, that reaction has occurred, it is 100%.
Well, Prof, how do you factor in
lost their life or suffer the disability? That is 100%.
So how do you also factor in talks about, the blood clots not being related to the vaccines just yet, that there is no link or proof of any link between the blood clots and the vaccines? And, some scientists have also said, well, the number of blood clot cases that have been seen is not really anything to worry about, because they believe that it's usual, what you see in about 10,000 or 100,000. So how do you factor in that side of the argument as well?
Well, you see, when you look at that, and look at the weekly report in the UK given by the government in Pfizer vaccine right now, you will see 212 deaths. And that's government report. This is not the press report. 212 deaths.
Just a moment.
I'm just saying.
No, we lost the first part of your response. So if you could just take that again because of the network. Thank you.
Yes. Well, what I was saying, that the first part, the first thing you have to look at when you look at the responses, you look at the massive number that is being reported even from other vaccines. For example, the UK report, the government report on the vaccine adverse. If you look at that number, you will see 212. Will 212 of these people die from the disease? So
We'll definitely come back to this conversation. Clearly, the network is not quite friendly at this moment, but when we return from this break, we'll continue the conversation. Just stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us. Professor Njemanze, perhaps a clarity is necessary here. Just what exactly are you talking about happened in the UK? Are you saying that some people who took vaccines in the UK have died as a result of it?
Yeah, there is an adverse effect reporting system in the UK, and these numbers are put out by the government. So and let's say the person dies, it does not mean the vaccine killed the person, but what it means is that it's brought under the notice of the authorities and they start the investigational processes. So that's how they report all this. Even different reactions, diarrhea, temperature, all that is reported, and they put out the numbers. But in that category of and this is a weekly report, and you can see in that category you have 212 of those suspected. It might happen that it might not be related. Not all of them are related in any way to the vaccine. Some might be. The same thing when Norway started, 39 deaths. So that one was put under investigation by the Norwegian authorities. So the issue is, until it occurs in Nigeria, they're the same human beings in Ireland and in Iceland as in Nigeria. So you must take a precautionary approach. That's why the NAFDAC director correctly qualified it as emergency approval. And emergency there is the key word. It underscores that we are actually at the stage of pharmacovigilance. If anything occurs, you stop it. You know, they didn't tell the NAFDAC didn't tell the factory that was producing food where the occurred. Oh, wait a minute, continue putting out the product until we finish our investigation. No, they didn't do that. They stopped them immediately and then started the investigation. That's what should be done. Once this occurs, it's an experimental vaccine. The countries in Europe did the correct thing. They will suspend.
All right. Well, Professor Njemanze, clearly we need to work on that connection. But let's go back to Professor Adeyeye while we work on that one. Madam, how do you react to some of the things that you've heard Professor Njemanze talk about?
The investor comments again. That's the correct thing.
Professor Njemanze, please hold on. Just let's go back to Professor Adeyeye.
Yes, I could see the perspective of Professor Njemanze. However, this is not the first drug that will be under emergency use authorization. And this is not the first vaccine that is being used for COVID-19. As a regulatory authority, NAFDAC being a regulatory authority, we are part of the International Coalition of Medicine Regulatory Authorities. NAFDAC is the only African country that is being represented there. And every day, information is shared about side effects of or adverse events of serious nature. So it is transparent. For example, anaphylactic reaction. Pfizer, BioNTech, Moderna have reported anaphylactic reactions. Bell palsy, temporary weakness of the muscles of the eye, partial temporary paralysis of the eye muscles. Those have been reported. Should we then have stopped those two vaccines from being used? It is knowing that these are serious, but the benefits outweigh the risks. Do you want hundreds of people to die? Or if there is a very, very minimal chance that somebody will have serious adverse event, you have to. It is logical. People are dying of COVID-19. The vaccine should not be stopped unless it is of a massive, statistically massive occurrence. When I was wanted to take mine, I asked the doctor, do you have drug for anaphylactic reaction? Because I have severe reactions to many things. And the doctor said yes. At the point of injection, I said, did you bring it? I asked the doctor, did you bring it? Because if I were given the vaccine and I faint, then I want them to give me a jab immediately. So will I now say it is my own fainting or whatever is the one that is what caused, it is the vaccine that caused it? No.
Madam, perhaps a challenge. Perhaps the
Yes.
challenge, this information, for instance, that you have put out, perhaps that is the challenge because, I think we've had this conversation before. Many people don't know what they're allergic to. And if there are things that they're allergic to and that the injection could cause a spike or cause a reaction as a result of it, then the challenge is there. I mean, for instance, that you are allergic to a number of things and you had enough information to be able to take that precaution. But we can't say that for all 200 million Nigerians or the 4 million people that are going to, not for all the 4 million people that are going to take the injections.
You are absolutely right. And we are now emphasizing that we should engage the potential vaccinee a little bit longer. Ask about their history. You don't need to take the vaccine if you don't feel good about yourself or you are. For example, how do we know there is no drug-drug interaction? We don't know. And it is at phase 4, even when not for even vaccine, it is at phase 4 when you are now giving it to millions that you may start finding out drug-drug interaction. And if it causes death, even at phase 4, and I'm not talking of the vaccine, we put a black box.
Yes.
We put a black box in the package insert, which was not there during phases 1, 2, 3.
Hello. Is it better now?
Clearly, we're trying to work on the audio of Professor Njemanze, but Professor Adeyeye, please continue. The part of the concerns that a number of people have had is what you have just raised, and let's just hope that indeed, just as you have said, people who are the vaccinators themselves will have enough patience to be able to engage the vaccinees, many of which may be ignorant of their own health history, may not even have some of this information. Now, let me reference something that the Commissioner for Health in Lagos said the other time when he talked about 2 categories of reactions: events after vaccination and events of special interest. Could you please clear the air on that? And do we have data from the field of people who have already taken the vaccines? Which one of these 2 categories have we had reports on so far?
Thank you so much. NAFDAC is mandated to have a pharmacovigilance study of many products coming into the market. And we started preparing for this last October or November when we launched Med Safety app. We launched the Med Safety app to collect data. Adverse events following immunizations are like, pain in the arm after the shot, swelling or fever or chills. Those are normal reactions following immunization. However, anaphylactic reaction, like I mentioned, is not a normal reaction following immunization. It is adverse event of serious interest. Bell palsy, temporary paralysis of the face, is adverse event of serious nature or special interest. So we categorize this based on the severity. And at the National Hospital, for the first week, about 550-something healthcare workers were vaccinated. We got a report of about 5 or 6 adverse events following immunization, from a little bit of fever to chills to pain at the site of injection to tummy rumbling, not really going much after that. But we have not recorded adverse events of serious nature. or special interest.
Okay, let's take this back to...
We may, yeah.
Okay, let's take this back to Professor Njemanze now. We have him on phone. So earlier on, you said that you don't think, Nigeria is in a pandemic situation, and you gave figures to corroborate that. The question now would be, time and again you have spoken against, or at least shared your reservations against vaccines. You've spoken about Pfizer, now AstraZeneca. The question is, what would you rather we do instead of this vaccination rollout? What is the other option?
Yeah, actually, the thing is to define what is the objective. In the belt, I said 30 to 50 degrees north, just across the globe, where this pandemic is raging, where there is a very high mortality, we have very, very low mortality, also in the 0.000% of our population. The driving issue is that they want to get quickly to herd immunity using the vaccine. That's their objective. So and that's why they are rolling out the vaccine, so it can drive them to herd immunity. That's the objective. What is the objective in Nigeria? That's the point. And when this objective is not clearly defined, are you trying to give the vaccine so the Nigerians will get to herd immunity? What's the objective of doing that? And you have to have a clear-cut answer.
Time and again, pardon me, let me just drop this in. Time and again, the MPHCDA and other officials at the PTF have said that we're trying to achieve herd immunity, which you have referenced. So isn't that a clear enough objective?
No, wait a minute. The herd immunity comes when you have a massive spread, and then you are now using the vaccine to terminate the transmission. But when you are quoting numbers of 168, 170, 200,000, over 200 million, then that's not a massive spread. So what are you really trying to achieve with a mass vaccination? It has never been done in the history of humanity to pick the whole population and start vaccinating them against any. You use vaccines to confine the spread of an infection.
Isn't that what inoculation and vaccination is about, trying to prevent a disease? Babies get vaccinations not because they have it already. And are you saying we should wait till a substantial percentage of our population gets COVID-19 before we start vaccination? Which one is it?
But we already observe it, that many people already have gotten COVID, and they have gotten it in a mild form, and they have achieved immunity. The most potent thing, okay, let's say you theoretically want to do that, and then the variant that comes up, maybe the Nigerian variant or new South African variant that comes up, the vaccine is not sensitive to you. So you start another vaccination exercise? It makes no medical sense, especially in our situation. Because you're not going to start this variant that comes. These things are made specifically for the most prevalent circulating variant. So if you're going to start vaccination exercise all the time to deal with this, that means we are going to have COVID-19, COVID-21, COVID-23, and this is going to go. When will this end? This is not the correct approach. We have dealt with Ebola in this country. We have dealt with Lassa fever in this country. Never was this approach ever taken. So the Europeans and the Americans are dealing with this for the very first time. And they are learning, and they are not learning very well. We should not just copy and paste what the Europeans and the Americans are doing because we want to look good internationally.
Okay, Prof, I think we should break this down further, so we can understand. Yeah. So you're saying that, or are you saying that we should have a substantial amount of people infected with COVID-19 before we begin to look into vaccination?
Exactly. The truth of the matter is that there are other things. In fact, the vaccine will not even help you to stop that spread, and that is the experience we are having.
So you reference other diseases, for example. People get yellow fever shots. Have we had substantial amount of Nigerians get yellow fever before the vaccination?
Well, wait a minute. We are not saying you should do targeted. targeted vaccination in the population at high risk. That's what you do. You see the medical personnel that are attending at the frontier, you do vaccination for them. You see, most of the Nigerians who get yellow fever vaccine, they get it most times when they are traveling. Okay? So they have to have a traveling passport. So they have to have their yellow fever card. So you don't just start vaccinating everybody. What can you do for all the diseases? You start vaccinating everybody for it?
Extension, Prof.
These are medical concepts that don't work.
But by extension, let me see if I can stretch this. You probably say that babies don't also need to get vaccination.
No, we don't need it right now for a mass vaccination. What we might need it for is to vaccinate the group at risk so we can confine the infection from spread. So, and there should be monitoring. There should be what the NAFDAC director said. There should be disease monitoring exercise. So we know where the outbreaks are coming from. We know which groups are at risk. You vaccinate those things to break the transmission. That's the principle. The principle of is unknown to medicine that you have to vaccinate everybody. I mean, where does that come from? We didn't read that in any textbook.
When you say, Prof, that it's unknown to medicine, are you saying that the entire global health community, it's also strange to them? They're just coming up with some hoopla?
You heard me say that they face, if you look at the map of the world, you will see latitude 30 to 50 degrees north. This is an area with low humidity. Sometimes their humidity falls to 20%. And they have low temperature too. And in this humidity belt, low belt, you have a spread because once the humidity is low and the temperature is low, you have a spread. That's the same thing that happens with the seasonal flu. So what now happens is in our own belt, we have high humidity and high temperature. So the possibility of spread is low. And those people who get in contact with this disease are usually those predisposed to that from one because they are traveling, or those who are in contact with healing, in the hospitals and other places where they come in contact. So you select those groups at risk. You don't go vaccinating everybody as rightly as the
So in the present circumstance then, what would you suggest that the nation should do? Clearly, with all the appeal that government has been making, people aren't abiding by the non-pharmaceutical initiatives. So what do you suggest?
Yeah, my suggestion is very simple. We face all the viruses that come, both seasonal and otherwise. We face them with therapeutics. That's what we should do when some people are sick. At the end, if they get the disease, they come out alive with herd immunity, natural immunity. Now, for those at risk, those medical personnel at risk, and those people in traveling and are in contact with those that's why you do the contact tracing issues, you vaccinate those areas to break the transmission. That's what is done. We are not going to have all the measures they are taking don't even make any sense. You lock down the whole economy. When you lock down in Nigeria, you are locking down in Ajegule, you have 10 people living in a room. When you lock down, you crowd people in one place. If they are not locked down, they walk in the peripherals where they are selling in outer space.
All right, Professor Njemanze, let's have the reaction of the NAFDAC DG. Professor Adeyeye, how do you respond to some of these issues?
Okay, yes, we are seeing variants of this COVID virus developing. We don't know what is going to happen tomorrow. COVID-19 may become a seasonal flu-like disease. And when you have such a disease, you've got to get your vaccination. That cannot be overemphasized because of the lethality of the disease, the seriousness of it. Anybody that has been to the isolation ward with ventilator in the nursery or whatever, or mouth of people, will know that the best precautionary step is to take the vaccine. The approach that Professor Njemanze is taking, I would say it is a logical but not medically based approach, because we develop drugs every day, we regulate drugs every day, we see side effects from clinical or preclinical to clinical. And it is when beyond proof the benefits outweigh the risks that we approve. And let me just share something. What we are doing as International Coalition of Medicine Regulatory Authorities is to collate all what are being observed, whether it is adverse event following immunization or serious one of special interest, so that we will be able to educatively decide whether any of these vaccines may not be approved. Meaning licensed, because right now we are just giving emergency use authorization. And bear in mind, AstraZeneca was approved by matured agencies. It was given emergency use listing by WHO. But while doing all this, while this assessment was going on, nobody pretended that there may not be
another challenge.
Events of special interest.
Yes, perhaps another challenge there would be because clearly people are on different sides of the divide as far as this vaccination is concerned. So we have an issue then clearly of communicating the safety and efficacy of the COVID-19 vaccine to many, many more people in a way that they will understand. Taking that challenge on, Prof, would be the next task. So how do we go about it?
Thank you so much. We aired on another station yesterday about Med Safety app. Anybody can download it free on Google, if it's Android, or on App Store for iPhone. People can self-report. If they are educated enough, they have a smartphone, they can self-report. At the vaccination centers, our epidemiologists from primary health, our pharmacovigilance staff from NAFDAC are there at the vaccination center to give out, even for those who don't have iPhone. And the downloading is free, by the way, for the Med Safety app. Millions can download it. But if they cannot afford it, or they don't know how to use the app electronically, we give the yellow form so that they can fill in what their side effects are, and God forbid, adverse events of special interest. But we need the data. Without the data, we regulators will be in a very difficult situation to approve the vaccines or to fully approve the vaccines.
Okay, well,
so
let's
it's extremely important. Yes.
All right, pardon me, just to get Professor Njemanze to also put in his final thoughts as we wind down. So, Prof, I mean, we've had quite an interesting conversation around this, but clearly we have to move forward. I know you've spoken about what we should do moving forward, but what are your final thoughts, your closing thoughts?
Well, I applaud NAFDAC for what they are doing, the good work they are doing. However, if you tell a farmer in Zunguru to download an app from NAFDAC, it will not be useful for the farmer. So we have a different situation, and we cannot take the first world approach for the problem we face. Our still old approaches are effective, even for this disease. Let me give you just a simple example.
We have completely run out of time for that example, but we have to thank you very much for the thoughts that you have expressed this morning. Professor Philip Njemanze is Chairman, International Institutes of Advanced Research and Training, as well as Professor Mojisola Adeye, who is Director General of NAFDAC. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining us this morning and throwing light.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
We're back in a moment. Just stay with us.